I'm Marybeth Flachbart. I'm Ray Flachbart's wife. I have 3 children and 2 grandchildren, and I'm in education. I work for Education Northwest. A big change, or the game changer in our lives, was when my husband Ray was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's a couple of years ago. People often ask, what did you see, or how did you know? And we really didn't know. Ray reported maybe 5 years or 4 or 5 years before that he just didn't feel as sharp. And a very stressful job. The job is the CEO of Blue Cross of Idaho, and of course, you know, we can always blame it on stress or job, or we had teenagers at the time. But I did notice certain changes. I immediately thought that he just was choosing not to listen to me, so we had his hearing checked. He went through all kinds of other tests. There was memory issues. Again, I thought he was selectively choosing to remember things that he wanted to, but not what was important to me. But then I noticed too that he seemed to not be able to complete certain things. I know the term now is executive function, where you make a plan and then you're able to do all those things that you to execute it. And for Ray, who has always been extraordinary in his ability to do anything strategic or complicated, it just threw me a curve. I didn't get it. And so there was a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of hurt feelings. Of course, it's all about me. So I interpreted that he just didn't want to do things, and then came to realize as it didn't get better and it got worse that something else was going on. We had moved to Houston for my dream job. I was the head of Nyhouse Education Center at the time, a literacy think tank. But luckily we were there, and we started all over again in terms of what was going on. At this time, because I was so frustrated kind of with him and his behavior, I insisted upon going with him. And I would say that that's something that I would suggest for family members. If you have any indication that it is a cognitive issue or something, that person is having a really hard time just being present. And so having an advocate, having somebody there to listen to the doctor, to ask the next questions, is really a good idea. So in that process, we saw a neurologist, and Ray heard diagnosis after a CAT scan and an MRI, and then a full battery of psychoeducational testing was that it was early onset Alzheimer's. We walked into her office, we sat down, or the examining room. She came in, she made this pronouncement. She handed me a brochure about Alzheimer's, and then she said, "I'll give you some time alone," and she left. And that was a horrendous experience. Ray was shattered. I had suspected that something was going on, but I didn't know that I was expecting that. But then they just left us alone and said, well, she said, "I'll come back in about 20 minutes, and if you have any questions." And after she left, I mean, he was shocked. I was I'm not even sure what I was feeling, kind of numb, but I thought the next thing to do is to get a second opinion. We did, in addition, Ray had a PET scan, which definitely proved that there were proteins on the brain, but the difference between the first diagnosis and the second was so extraordinary. I believe they suspected it the second time around. I was contacted by a social worker from Methodist Hospital. She came and met with me in my office. She didn't say what the diagnosis was going to be, but just talked about the different resources in the community. Then when we went to see the neurologist, she introduced herself to Ray. She said that oftentimes the doctor liked to have her there so that she could explain anything or spend some more time, if he would be comfortable with that. He said yes, and the diagnosis was confirmed. But what I worry about for us is, I think many people have our first experience, but I wish more people would have the second experience, because not only is it the person, the patient, the identified patient, but it really does impact the whole family. And she became such a resource for us, and she was the first person to connect me with the Alzheimer's Association and the support group. So I can't thank her enough. And